What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy Morgan Cannon, and we are here to start our free agent preview. Morgan, free agency kicks off next week. Seems like it got here a lot sooner than I think any of us planned to. It feels like we were literally just talking about the draft and the combine, and we're already kind of shifting gears, talking about free agents, seeing a lot of teams either sign players, re-sign players, trade players. It's been a busy day in the NFL, even just today.
Yeah, everybody requested trades and stuff. Like DK Metcalf wants out. We already know about Deebo Samuel getting traded to Washington. So, yeah, the NFL, it's cool, man, because it's becoming more of like an active. Back in the day, it wasn't like this, guys. Like if you're, a little more seasoned like me and Miko,
Mm-hmm.
the NFL off seasons used to be quiet. Like people didn't request trades. It was much more. It wasn't like the NBA, like the NBA is now. But I like it, right, Miko? Like it gives us something to talk about, and I like when the Lions play later into the season, man, because every year the off season feels short, right? Like we're at
That
free
too.
agency, and then
Yes.
boom, it'll be the draft, and we're up. We're off.
I think that's another thing that does make it seem like the offseason is kicking off sooner, is that the Lions are just playing later into the season. So you don't have as much of a gap of things just not happening. But yeah, we're already kind of transitioning into that phase of the offseason where, again, we're a week away where we're going to start hearing, GMs are going to start talking to agents. Agents are going to start having these types of verbal agreements before, people actually put pen to paper and things like that. But it's an exciting time. And it's a time that when, as a fan of the Lions, you're hearing a lot of people that have opinions on, hey, the Lions should sign this player, or the Lions should prioritize this person. And so I think with the series that we're going to kick off now, Morgan, it gives us an opportunity to kind of throw our hat in the ring and kind of look position by position and talk about, some of the holes that the Lions have, and at least give our opinion on how we think they should go about, filling out this roster before they go into next season.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited to jump into it because we're starting with, I think, in my opinion, the most important decision that Brad Holmes and the Lions have to make this offseason, because it's at cornerback. Like, what do you do with Carlton Davis, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny, right? A couple hours, we're recording this Wednesday night, but at 4:25, Carlton tweeted, "I won't make the same mistake twice. If you want your defense upgraded, y'all know who to pay. Turn on the tape!" Exclamation point. What'd you think about that, man?
Yeah, no, and listen, you and I kind of had the same exact reaction where it was kind of like, he's not wrong, right?
Uh-huh.
You can't be mad about it, but it is it's another telltale sign that hey, free agency is right around the corner, and the players know it too, and they know, and they've either probably been hearing from their agent or they've been seeing things online, and they want to get that message out there, like, hey, if you think that I'm going to, you're going to get me for cheap, or that, you know, I'm going to take a quote unquote team friendly deal. Carlton's making it somewhat known that hey, I know my value. I think that's probably the clear sign that you can at least take from that tweet is he's a player that's well aware of what he brings to a team, not just what he brings to Detroit, but also you look back at what everything that he was doing in Tampa. And that's the part where he's like, hey, you're not going to catch me slipping twice. He probably looks at what the deal that he took in Tampa as hey, I took a team friendly deal. Right. I did what was necessary to keep that defense together. But hey, I'm at a point now in my career where I would like to get paid. I'd like to be taken care of. I'd like to be able to take care of my family for years to go.
No doubt. I think that's where that's where his brain is. That's where my brain would be. And I try to, remove my obvious Lions bias when I'm thinking about stuff like this, right, Miko? Because
Mm-hmm.
you gotta think like the player, y'all. So Carlton was 29. He got drafted by the Bucks back in 2018, played out his rookie deal, and then, like Miko said, got a little extension, 3 years for 44 with a 24 and a half guaranteed. So that's what you really want to focus on. Like if you've heard us talk about the salary cap before, pay attention to those guaranteed, the guaranteed money, because that's what players and agents are most likely going to talk about first. So he's done with that. That contract has expired, obviously. And I was talking to Jeremy earlier in Slack just to clarify something. We're not sure if that contract is voided yet. So, and what we mean by that is if it hasn't voided, the Lions, if they were to extend him, could technically keep those voided years and spread out that salary cap hit for 2025.
Mm-hmm.
But if it has voided, one thing to keep in mind is they do have a $9.8 million, let's call it $10 million cap hit for 2025, that's dead money no matter what. If the contract has in fact voided, it does say it says it has voided on overthecap.com. So that's one wrinkle to keep in mind, because if you do extend Carlton, like we were talking about Miko, you would take that cap hit, that say it's $15 million if they extend him, right, Miko?
Yeah.
And then you would add that $9.8 million to that number, and you'd be at almost 25 million for Carlton Davis in 2025. And hopefully that makes sense for people, but it's just something to consider when you're thinking about bringing Carlton back into the fold or not. And I know how I feel, Miko, but like, how do you feel about potentially bringing Carlton Davis back to the Lions for a couple years?
I've been saying it since day one. I think Carlton Davis is worth the money, right? And I don't, again, we are not cap experts. We are not agents. We are not like, so I can't say definitively like, hey, this is what you should pay Carlton Davis. But when it comes down to what the Lions need on this roster in terms of needing, not just a good corner to play opposite Terry Arnold, like you need someone that's going to fit your identity. And watching Carlton Davis play for the majority of last season prior to him, fracturing his jaw, Carlton looked every bit like the type of corner that the Lions have been looking for ever since Dan Campbell took over. He played physical in the pass game. He played physical in the run game. You really felt that like when he was out there, no matter who he was matched up against, he was going to give them a very difficult time. And it's one of those things, I've said this before, Morgan. I feel like when it comes down to secondary play, it's really tough to judge when you look at stats alone, right? Because there's so much that the corner has to do in terms of trying to just limit the success that is happening on his side of the field. But when you turn on the tape and you watch Carlton Davis play, that's where you can truly see his impact. Did he still give up receptions? Yes. Did he still give up a couple touchdowns? Sure. Did he only have 2 interceptions? Yes. But you look at his actual impact on the game throughout the season, and you're just like, man, this dude's out there competing every single play. And once he was no longer on the field, you saw it even more of just like, again, how much they missed him being out there and shadowing guys on the defensive side.
Yeah, and he was traveling with number ones. I'm glad you made that point, Miko, because scheme and matters so much. And the Lions, as we've talked about, played a whole lot of man coverage in 2024. And that matters because it's just how the game dictates and like how your stats look, right? Like can make a world of a difference. And to your point, Miko, when the Lions defense, even post the Hutchinson injury, I know that's the one everyone focuses on, they were beating people to sleep, man. And even post Hutchinson, like they were still beating the you-know-what out of people. Jacksonville, Tennessee, that Dallas game, even when Hutchinson got hurt, that was just complete and utter. That looked like a Big Ten team playing a MAC team early in September. That's what that looked like. And that doesn't happen at the NFL level. And I say all that because Carlton Davis was a big old piece of that, man. And I sincerely believe he was playing like a top flight corner in 2024 before. And I know there's been questions about his availability through years prior to 2024, but that was a freak injury, man. Breaking your jaw just in like a bang bang play.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna hold that against him. And I like that he said it, turn on the tape, because that's what people value the most. I know we talk about it a ton and y'all are probably like, okay, yeah, who cares? But it matters, right, Miko? And he put it all out there. He's a complete corner.
I would say it matters more for secondary play than it does for most other positions, right? Like outside of offensive line, where there's not like a ton of stats to like showcase your impact, like it's offensive line and then it's corner, right? Because again, I get it. People want to look at, okay, well, did you give up touchdowns and did you give up yards and things like that? We're going to talk about some other guys that I think are also free agents, but like Carlton's numbers still, even if we wanted to go off of numbers, his numbers still stack up fairly well against other players. The difference to me is what he was asked to do in terms of going out there playing corner and what he was doing when you like actually turn on the film. And like I said, he wasn't just a cover guy. Like again, PFF isn't the end all be all, but to have a 77 run defense grade, like as a corner is a great sign. It's a great like badge of honor to have, because there were so many times throughout the season, Morgan, where teams would try to run outside to whatever side Carlton Davis was on, and he was torpedoing people left and right.
Yeah, he plays the position there's a reason they were excited to get him. And then there was that quote Dan Campbell had when he like went up like
Mm-hmm.
to Carlton in like a meeting. He was like, "Man, the best thing we did this offseason was acquiring you." So if that doesn't tell you a whole lot, because y'all know how Dan Campbell likes to approach football, right? And
Yeah.
Aaron Glenn, and I really there's going to be differences for sure, but not some of the fundamental different like the way they approach football. I think Calvin Shepard's going to be right in line with the way Aaron Glenn, and he's going to want to play man. Maybe not as much. We'll see,
Yeah.
but I still think it's going to be a staple. He's a former player, and if you have the people to do it, that's when you can really become like a really elite defense. When you can pressure pretty consistently with 4 or 5 people and you have a competent secondary that can play zone,
Mm-hmm.
that can match, just go cover zero across the board and like pin their ears back. That's when you generate turnovers, and that's when you beat the crap out of people. And that's what the Lions did several times. Like I said, post even after 97 went down, they still were doing it. And I firmly believe Davis was a big part of that. And I know that people are going to be like, oh, they have 2 young players and Terrion Arnold and
Mm-hmm.
Ennis Rakestraw, but I don't want to. The Lions are contenders, man. I think if they were a rebuilding team, early on in a rebuild, we talked about this, Miko.
Yeah.
I think you'd have more. You'd be like, let's just roll with Terrion and Ennis and see what happens, and just let them take their lumps like they did with Aleem and Levi. You made that point
Yep.
early on, but they're a contending team, and I think adding Davis to the mix gives you your best shot at like creating that top flight defense that you need to win a championship, right?
Yeah, I agree. And like we talked about, and like I said, I don't want to go into like what the numbers could look like for someone like Carlton Davis, but I think giving him another 3-year extension and structuring it in a way where maybe you have an out after 2 years, right? So that way you give Terrion and Ennis more time to develop. It allows Carlton to still make the money that he wants to make, and he's still able to help elevate your defense and as well as be a mentor to those younger guys. Because I still believe in Terrion Arnold. I still believe in Ennis Rayshaw Jr., but that doesn't mean that you just have to throw them to the wolves because you don't want to pay one person, right? Like I think you have to again still be mindful of what this team needs. They don't just need players; you also need mentors. You need guys that can help your young guys continue to adjust and acclimate to the NFL. And you have 2 guys that you just mentioned that are only going into their second year. One of them played a lot. The other played very little, right? So it's like
Yep.
you still need that veteran leadership in the locker room, specifically in that cornerback.
There with you, bro. And I have really high hopes for both Terrion and Rakestraw, but I would like it if it were, they were to be able to bring back Carlton Davis and your starters are Terrion and Carlton outside, and then you have Amik back at the nickel, and you have Rakestraw as your backup out, outside corner, your third outside corner. That's a pretty good situation to be in,
Yeah,
and you're off and away from there. So that's where I'm at, man. And I know we'll get into a couple of the options, but if you look at it, guys, we're going to go through a couple of them. They don't do a lot. They don't do more for me than there's some good players in here, but not better than Carl.
there's one, right, and we can kind of transition into that because again,
Yeah.
this is free agency, and Carlton does have the right to go out there. His agent's gonna speak to other teams, and he's going to see what his value is to other teams. Doesn't mean that the Lions don't value him, but someone else may value him a little bit more and willing to give him more guaranteed money or maybe more years, whatever the case may be. So the Lions still have to have their eyes on other potential options to be those starting corners. Morgan, I'm going to start with my top option after Carlson because Carlson is my number one. But at the number 2 spot, I got to go with Travarius Ward. And I think Travarius is in a very similar situation as Carlton Davis, where you're not getting him for cheap. Like you're going to have to invest fairly heavily if you're expecting to lure him away from other potential teams. But this is another guy that's again a little bit on the older side, 28 years old as of right now, not coming off the greatest season, right? And it's not just him, that entire 49ers team struggled, but that doesn't sway me away from the fact that Travarius Ward for so many seasons was one of the top corners in terms of again his physicality in the passing game as what and his physicality in the run game. Like he is someone that will do just about everything you ask him to do when it comes down to playing corner. He has great size at 6'1", just under 200 pounds. He's a guy that if you're saying that you're not comfortable paying Carlton Davis for whatever reason, he is another guy that I think is deserving of the same amount of money, if not more, if you're talking about signing another free agent corner.
Yeah, Ward would be my top option if it's not Carlton Davis too. And he's physical, will tackle. Played in that San Francisco defense when they were at their tip top, but they to your point, they were just so banged up last year. Not as bad as the Lions, but they weren't that far behind. They were pretty decimated on both sides of the ball too, with McCaffrey and Depot missing time. So, but yeah, Ward would be my top option. And then after that, it's kind of a steep drop. Like I like Slay. I love Darius Slay, man. All right, been a Lions fan a long time. Was really high on Slay when they took him in the second round out of Mississippi State in 2013. Him and I are the same age. So I'm sure that man feels old, right?
Older, if anything, because he's been playing football for the last few
more
years.
Mileage. Yeah, more mileage. Yeah. I hope he's taking care of him. I'm sure he is. Listen, I really like Darius Slay. I think that would be like a less expensive option. Slay's, I think he said one more year. So you'd be looking at I don't know, 1 year. I'm not going to speculate on that, but Snead got 4 for $76 with 44 guaranteed. What year was that again, Miko? You said 2022? No,
he signed that last year. Yeah, he just signed that last year.
Tennessee, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Carlton could do that, man. He could go to, like, there was that rumor, I don't know who said it, that Jacksonville had
Jacksonville has their eyes on him. Yeah. And a lot of teams should, right? But I think to your point about Darius Slay to me is an option that if we're still continuing to just spin the tires on 1 year rentals, Darius Slay rises to the top for me, right?
Okay, let's go.
There's not too many corners that have done it at the level that Darius has. And I think him coming from Philadelphia, and you see the type of impact. Again, I guess we don't know the level of impact necessarily, but we know that he was in that room with Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, and we saw how they were able to grow and mature in that Eagle system. I think you would still get that level, like you could get that same impact from Darius or from Slay coming over to the Lions and being that mentor for Terrion Arnold, for Ennis Rakestraw, and still going out there and still competing at a high level and still being, maybe he's not the guy that's going to travel with the number one wide receiver, but you can still go out there and play him in a way where he'll still be competitive. You are probably going to have to tweak your system a little bit because, again, he's 34. You probably can't run him in man as much as you would like to, but Slay can still be very impactful in zone situations. And again, I think there would be a level of like rejuvenation of just coming back to the team that initially drafted him. But yeah, in terms of like long-term solutions, he's further down my list. But if we're talking about like, hey, you're trying to get an impactful 1 year type of starter, Slay definitely starts to rise up the list for me.
I love it, man. I'd be happy. Listen, I love Darius Slay. I think he's hilarious. He'd be a really good vet because he had really good vets when he was drafted. He had Glover Quinn and Rashean Mathis. Like, those are good vets, man. And I think that's why they made him, because he was a goofball back in the day. Like, he's country. He's funny. He plays video games, chilling, but he's like matured. You can tell just his approach and everything. Because, yeah, I'd be thrilled. He's definitely, option 3 for me after, if it's not Carlton or Travarius Ward, just because I want to be able to do whatever Kelvin Shepard thinks is the best thing to do that week. You know what I mean? Because that was the goal for the Lions under Aaron Glenn. I think it'll be the same for Shepard. They want to have the personnel defensively to match whatever they need to match, or to expose whatever they need to expose, like whether they need to go with a 5-man front 1 week, play a bunch of zone 1 week. They can do it all. And so Slay would check that box off for me for sure. And I love that point that you made, being a great vet to really the whole secondary, because everyone's pretty young except that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because Amik's 25 or 26, I think. He's younger too.
So the entire secondary is still fairly young at this point. And I think if the Lions wanted to continue in that direction, this is where a Paulson Adebo out of New Orleans kind of starts to rise the ranks for me. Right. I know there's people that are going to be talking about James Bradbury. I know people are going to talk about DJ Reed. I still like the idea of going out and getting you another nice size corner. Paulson Adebo is 6'1", again, just under 200 pounds as well, coming off a fairly good year, 3 interceptions, 7 PBUs. Like, again, for a team that was struggling in New Orleans, he went out there and competed week in and week out. And he's someone that I've been a fan of since he first got drafted. Like he was one of those players that when the Lions were, drafting on like day 2, day 3, I was like, this would be a kid that would be a great fit just in terms of his physicality and how he plays the position. And again, has spent some time in New Orleans. I think he's probably crossed over with Dan Campbell. So again, there may be some familiarity there. I just think he would be a good fit into like what the Lions are currently building. And again, you're not just doing a 1-year rental. You're getting someone that's only 25 years old. So you can give him a 4-year type contract and at least let him be able to play that out as he kind of gets older.
Yeah, I'd be cool with the Debo. Nate Hobbs is another one I would consider. That'd be, it just wouldn't move the needle for me as much. Like, there's some vets out there. You got Shaquille Griffin, Rasul Douglas. You can't bring Jordan Lewis here because him and St. Brown hate each other.
Yeah, that's a fight day 1 of camp.
Sorry, even though Jordan's from here and everything, but yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know. Maybe that's what they need though. Maybe they just need like one good like slugfest and they can get it out their systems and like, all right, cool. Now we're good.
I don't know why Jordan picks with Saint, bro. I don't know. But Jordan is pretty crazy, to be honest with you, just from everything I know about him as a player and everything. It's just pretty loose. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I hope this illustrates the point for people though. Like, if the Lions do, give Carlton a nice little bag, like Miko said, 3 years, 2 years with 3 years with an out after 2, get some guaranteed money up front, because he's going to command that first deal, like we said, was $24 million. That 3-year extension he signed with Tampa Bay back in 2022. I would expect, I don't know. I don't want to throw around numbers, but I don't know.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's definitely going to be probably north of 40 guaranteed.
That's the number I was thinking too, 40-ish.
Yeah. And so before we get, I do wanted to mention for the Nate Hobbs pick, I do like that as a pick just because again he has a little bit of versatility, playing slot, playing outside. Obviously has some history with Amik Robertson, them both being on the Las Vegas Raiders at the same time. And he seems like a player that could have like that same type of like impact that Amik did, where like again not probably a name that a lot of people know, but it could be a similar situation where like I was not very familiar with Amik last year, and then we turned on his tape and it was like, oh no, he's one of those ones. Like,
yeah.
And so. And again,
unfortunately,
Nate Hobbs,
that's just playing with the Raiders, right, bro?
Like, right, exactly. Where you're just not as well of a name of a known name, and so
yeah.
I would be interested to see if Nate Hobbs is in a similar situation where it's like, hey, he's just been kind of buried on a team that hasn't really competed all that well. But again, young guy, only 25 years old, so the investment of a 3 to 4 year deal isn't going to break you in the same way, or it's not stretching you in terms of the way that it would if you're signing, even someone like a Shaq Griffin, who I think is over 30, like 31 as well. So you start to kind of get into those situations where you only can realistically probably keep those players on your roster for 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, I'd rather get more of a, I don't know. You could get there's an argument to be made too. A 1-year rental makes sense. I understand that from people, just because if you do hit on Ennis and Terrion, that'd be a nice little cheap way to have your two starting outside cornerbacks for a couple years, or at least cost controlled. I shouldn't say cheap because Terrion was a first round pick. So, but yeah, I think they could go either way. But I think everyone will be in agreement with us that no one wants to just roll into next year with the rookies or not the rookies, the 2nd-year players and Amik, and we'll see. I was
going to say, you're talking about rolling into a situation where it's Amik, Terrion, Ennis, and then whoever you decide to sign as depth from that standpoint. Like, I think you would like to have a more established starter to pair with that group and then see how things kind of transpire from there. So that's just our opinions on the situation, guys. We would love to hear from you guys in the comment section below. Let us know some of the corners that are high on your list. Maybe it is some of those names that we mentioned, a DJ Reed, a James Bradbury, a Shaq Griffin, or maybe someone that we didn't mention at all that you're like, hey, you guys, didn't really mention this player. We think you would be a good fit for the Lions, whether it's affordability or just, again, as a long-term solution to continue to help round out this roster. If you're also interested in keeping up with any more additional Lions news, especially when free agency kicks off next week, definitely check out prideofdetroit.com. All the latest news, rumors, updates, all of that's going to be posted over on the website. So you definitely want to make sure that you're checking out the website as often as you possibly can. And make sure that you're subscribed to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel as well. Morgan and I might drop like some impromptu videos. I don't know. Depending on how crazy free agency gets next week, we may have a lot more content for you guys. So you definitely want to be subscribed. Definitely want to hit that notification bell. That helps out us as a channel, but it also makes it easier for you guys to find out our content as well. But with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.